How's it going, everybody? So in this video I wanted to discuss the gut microbiome a little bit further. And if you haven't already, you should definitely go back and watch my comprehensive video on probiotics and the gut microbiome that I released about 2 months ago, where I actually went deep into detail on the research, why the research is flawed, and I actually have timestamps where I actually marked down the timestamp for every specific subject I mentioned. I discussed everything from the rat fecal matter studies to different forms of probiotics and how they can possibly affect health outcomes. I talked about why fermented foods might have unique benefits that probiotic supplements simply cannot provide, and it might not actually have anything to do with the gut microbiome changes that they might create. So definitely go back and watch that. I think I covered everything in that video. And then I released 2 videos actually. I released the first one as a super comprehensive video, and the second one where I tried to double down and explain further and answer some of the questions I had gotten. So this is very important because gut microbiome, I think, is an area of research that highlights what I think is just seriously wrong with the health science community and the health and nutrition, especially the natural holistic health and nutrition science community, which I'm a part of. It highlights the flaws in our thinking as a whole very, very accurately. And I'm going to make a whole video where I just talk about some of the serious flaws in approaching health science and nutrition, and some of the flaws in the average person's paradigm surrounding life in general, just as a whole, that is really holding us back from seeing truth or being able to navigate truth, whatever you want to call truth, or what's likely to be true. Just flaws in people's thinking in general. So I'll make a video talking about that specifically later, but let's talk about the gut microbiome. So, and it doesn't have to be talked about in this context, but this is kind of like what sparked my idea to make this video. So, Sean Baker, I follow him on Instagram. I'm not really as much of a fan of carnivore influencers anymore because they're, not really providing any new information at this point. We know that there's a lot of people that can heal lots and lots of illness, but specifically autoimmune illness on carnivore diets. That can't be healed through other means, and I myself did the same thing similarly, but I find that certain plant foods I can tolerate. And they've kind of they're more like conspiracy theorists now. Not to say that there's no validity in some of these so-called conspiracies that they talk about, but they just hyperfixate on it, okay? So what I'm saying is I'm not really as much of a fan of these people anymore. Especially the crazy ones that think that garlic is toxic and that plant foods are what's killing people. It's a lot more nuanced than that, and it's kind of, in my opinion, ignorant to think that carbs are killing people just in general, or that plant foods are killing people. I think that's just ignorant, and you've got to be very delusional. Because there's a lot of counter evidence that just completely negates that. Not to say carnivore is not beneficial. Carnivore can be very beneficial. And for many people, just simply removing beans, nuts, seeds, grains, and legumes and just sticking to a paleo-ish diet is going to eliminate a lot of their long-standing problems that modern medicine can't solve. You don't necessarily need to be carnivore. Some people do. So carnivore can be very beneficial, but it's there's a thin line between carnivore being beneficial and then carnivore being the be-all, end-all, and then Dogma that's associated with it. I draw a line where people say, carbs are the devil, they're going to kill you, blah, 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 humans aren't designed to eat carbs. It depends on your spin on that, but in general, most people take that too far. It's not necessarily true. Plant foods killing people and all this stuff, even to the extent of Dr. Gundry, which he still eats a plant-based diet, it's not grounded in reality. For some people it might be beneficial again, but it's anyway, so the point that I'm trying to make is I'm not a fan of carnivore dogma, but I do follow Sean Baker, right? And so he posted a thing where it said, to date, there have been a handful of studies on the actual carnivore diet, including 3 of them in 2021. 100% of the published studies show that the carnivore diet results in significant health improvements. This should be the default assumption. So that was what he posted. And I have not read these carnivore studies, but there is a better study that I've posted before. It's a 12-month intervention comparing the Atkins diet, which is basically an animal-based diet, high in fat, saturated fat, high in sodium, high in animal protein, low in carbs. And they directly compared that to the Ornish diet. And they did all sorts of blood markers and things and had registered dietitians helping them to adhere to the diet. They also compared it to 2 other plant-based diets besides the Ornish diet. And the Atkins diet came out on top on everything dramatically improved except for LDL cholesterol. That is my golden standard. So I haven't seen these carnivore studies Sean Baker talks about, but I'm skeptical on if they're going to be anywhere near as good as the ones I'm talking about. And as far as I've seen, the only person talking about the study I'm talking about is called the A to Z weight loss study. You have to read the full text to see the blood markers. The only people that I know that talk about that study is Rob Wolf. I haven't seen many other people. But anyway, yeah. So I don't know about these carnivore studies. I'm going to have to look at them. But I definitely don't think 3 studies on a carnivore diet is enough to make something a default assumption. Again, I think carnivore is beneficial. I mostly follow a carnivore diet, and I did follow it exclusively for like 2 years. I competed in Muay Thai in a carnivore diet, but I'm not like a freaking ignorant, irrational, dogmatic zealot. So, I think we need more people who are level-minded in the low-carb in the carnivore community. Low-carb in keto has a lot of level-minded individuals. But there's just too many quacks, meaning just like people who just say unnecessary things. Like, carbs kill you, plants kill you. It's like, that's just unnecessary, and it's not true. And it gives us a bad name. But every group has that. So anyway, let's get to what sparked this fucking video, right? So someone commented, I am eagerly awaiting research on the effects of carnivore diet on the microbiome. And so usually people will say that as kind of like an antagonistic argument versus like trying to discredit the carnivore diet. Because there's no fiber and it's like we're going to die because our microbiome is going to die off, which is not true. We don't have studies on a carnivore microbiome that I'm aware of. But we do know of multiple carnivore influencers, including Paul Saladino and a few others, actually, who got, was it Uviome or something, tests done, and they showed a very high, variance or whatever, very high variety of microbiota, and showed to be, in the top 99th percentile of gut microbiome health, supposedly, from these tests. So it's we have case reports. That's the first thing. But I didn't say that because I don't give a shit. My reply was, why? Why are you so eagerly awaiting research on microbiome relating to carnivore? There's zero causal evidence between the gut microbiome and health outcomes, just in general. A couple people agreed with me, and then some random person, I'm not going to say their name. I don't know who they are. I don't really care. They said you might want to have a look at Gut Goddess and the Human Microbiome Project. Look into it. There's plenty of evidence, and we gain more every day. So I'm asking for causal evidence because to my knowledge, the closest thing we have is rat studies where they actually literally take fecal matter out of each other's colons to induce autism or something like that from an autistic rat, which is the most, it's kind of on the level of the China study where they fed a rat alpha toxin and then megadosed him on casein protein and found accelerated cancer growth with the casein protein but not plant protein in rats. It's just, it's there's no causal evidence outside of that, and that's just stupid. And so this person told me to look up the Human Microbiome Project, and it's basically on the level of the Nurses' Health Study, which is a very large observational study. Basically, they are taking snapshots of healthy human microbiomes. Who the fuck knows what they mean by healthy gut microbiomes? But they're taking a snapshot of healthy human microbiomes at 5 major body sites using a 16S and metagenomic sequencing shotgun sequencing. So they're taking a snapshot of someone's microbiome, and they're basically following them for a long period of time to correlate health outcomes. It's a cohort study, okay? I asked for observational evidence, or I asked for causal evidence, and this person acts all narcissistic, like, oh, like, you're ignorant, you shouldn't be commenting unless you've heard of the Human Gut Project or whatever. The Human Microbiome Project. Look into it. There's plenty of evidence and we gain every day. Look, I want causal evidence. That is not causal evidence, it's correlation. That's the same, and this person is carnivore and all this nonsense, right? They're a carnivore person, but they don't understand how to interpret research yet. The exact research that says we need, 12 cups of fruits and vegetables a day in order to be healthy, that's the same research that she's trying to send me to. And then, of course, the relative risk on those studies, just as an aside, actually the absolute risk of increase of disease in the lowest vegetable group is not significant. And the relative risk is statistically significant, but not clinically significant. These people don't understand statistics, and I only understand statistics because I actually have a client who has a PhD in data analysis, and we talk about this all the time, like twice a week during our sessions. So I just told her, explain, because I'm like, well, I'm asking for causal evidence, and now you're sending me this correlation study that doesn't even appear to be like, it's in process. It's like not even come to fruition yet. And then she's like, Google it and it'll be obvious. Like the standard reply to anyone who doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about. Google it and it'll be obvious. I think if you are unaware of this correlation evidence I linked you to, then you shouldn't be making the statements you've made. So wait, if I'm unaware of a large cohort study that is only good enough to prove correlation, I shouldn't be asking for causal evidence. It's very clear this person doesn't understand the difference between correlation and causation, and didn't fully understand what I was asking and why I was asking it. And of course, as blatantly, arrogant as I feel that person is being, arrogant in an ineffective way. Like, they don't have any reason to be arrogant. Look at their profile, of course. They're like, oh, like a holistic health coach or something. It's like, so I replied, yes, I am aware of that. I am aware of it, the Human Microbiome Project. What you're missing is that this form of research is examining the composition of bacteria in participants' microbiome and then correlating it with health outcomes. Unfortunately, the confounding variable in this correlation research is that the food they are eating and the lifestyle they live are what controls the composition of bacteria in their gut. So this has been shown. Probably one of the main causal links between microbiome and actual practical human health that we found is that what you eat changes the composition of bacteria in your gut. We know that. And in fact, just going outside in nature changes your bacteria. How much you slept last night will change your bacteria. Interacting with different humans changes your bacteria. Your bacteria literally changes to all forms of your environment. Your bacteria is a reflection of the outer world. It is not a cause of health outcomes. And I say this, that it's not a cause. I don't mean it in absolute terms, but we don't have evidence yet. That's why I'm asking. I want evidence. What I'm looking for is an intervention trial where they maybe give them a probiotic and they can actually show before the probiotic there was no bacterial changes, and after the probiotic they can show that probiotic changed strains of bacteria in their gut specifically. And then as the intervention trial continues, that bacterial strain changed only by the probiotic can be shown that was what caused better or worse health outcomes. We need an intervention trial that somehow tests the bacteria in your gut itself causing health outcomes. Not a study following a group of people that have a certain composition of gut microbiome and then they have certain health outcomes. It's literally the same as all correlation research. It's too many confounding variables. And this is way, way worse than like the fruit and vegetable recommendations. There's a lot of compounds in fruits and vegetables that have been shown in mechanistic studies to maybe provide, and also intervention trials, to maybe provide certain benefits. Polyphenol intervention trials that we've seen clinically significant changes in things like blood pressure, subjective levels of well-being and anxiety, depression, insomnia, and the list, and then even things like HDL, LDL. So we have better evidence for recommendations on fruit and vegetable intake. That's kind of like been correlated in cohort studies than we do microbiome. So and this carnivore person is like it's a double standard. Is that what they call it? It's a double standard. Cohort studies don't apply for fruit and vegetables, but they apply for microbiome research. That's just fucking stupid. And I'm a low carb carnivore, advocate, but I try to be as objective as possible. I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with these. Like this kind of thinking really gets me. And I'm wondering if maybe this person just hasn't studied it as much as they are portraying. Like maybe, they're new to this, and they are just kind of like talking like they know what they're talking about, but they just actually don't. I don't know. So yeah, unfortunately, the confounding variable is that the food that these people eat and the lifestyle they live are what controls the composition of bacteria in their gut. And it's more likely that the food and lifestyle are what controls the health outcomes. It's not the microbiome. It's likely that the microbiome itself is not what's controlling the health outcomes, but the nutrition and lifestyle that these people participate in. It makes a lot more sense to run randomized controlled trials with different nutritional and lifestyle interventions for evidence on health outcomes rather than fixating on the gut microbiome. Because the gut microbiome seems to be more likely a reflection of the lifestyle and nutrition patterns and not actually a cause of health outcomes. Correlation does not equal causation. Hence my original comment asking for causal evidence. So, yeah. Again, like, we have rat studies, like studies on autistic rats, where they take, the fecal matter out of the autistic rat and put it into a so-called healthy rat, and they induce autistic symptoms. Limitations on that is, number one, they're rats. Number two, we don't know what aspect of the fecal matter might be changing that. I mean, I'm sure just implanting someone else's fecal matter into you could cause like some, negative side effects in general, right? Even though I think that that's a standard kind of like intervention in like Crohn's disease and stuff. But, the other thing is autism is a highly subjective, syndrome where it's a spectrum of symptoms and it's based on the observation. It's not something like, colitis where you actually can see that your colon's bleeding, So, I mean, and that's not a cop-out. It's just the reality of the situation. It's not good enough evidence. And I do feel like, it's not quite as bad as Colin Campbell in the China study, but it's on the verge. But it's like, where are the human trials, right? Where are the clinical trials of humans? Like I've talked about previously how I've I've read many intervention trials on probiotic supplementations, and almost always there's no like clinically significant benefits and health outcomes, let alone changes, negative or positive, on probiotic supplementation. Like, there were some studies, but they have since been retracted or shown to be faulty, but there's not a robust collection of evidence, you know. And in regards to like the carnivore community, which I'm a part of, again, like the level of evidence on the microbiome that we have is so little. Like, there is probably 100 times more evidence showing fruit and vegetable intake is healthy, even though, again, that doesn't necessarily translate to clinical outcomes, which is shown by, you know, like, again, the evidence is not good enough to show a causal link, per se, but it's 100 times better than what we have in the microbiome. So, again, I need to see causal evidence, you know. That's also the reason why I don't put a lot of faith in just, like, binging myself in fruit and vegetable and polyphenols and fiber and whatnot, because it's like, you know, in fiber there's actually a lot of evidence that shows it might be problematic, okay? And there's, you know, books like the Fiber Menace. There's plenty of there's a meta-analysis actually showing it worsens certain markers of intestinal health. So yeah, I mean, interpret this how you will. But this is a huge flaw in people's thinking, you know? And it's just, to me, it's interesting. You know, we have, like Stephen Gundry, I need to get a new, like, live reaction video software thing, because Stephen Gundry posted kind of like a response to his debate with Paul Soldino. It didn't go so well in the favor of Stephen Gundry, where he was like, you know, because he's really big on polyphenols. All these people, these like book-selling gurus, plant-based people, they're really huge in polyphenols. And most of the evidence of polyphenols in actual human trials and cohort studies actually shows, so there is a double-edged sword. Some show promise for clinical health outcomes, like I mentioned earlier, but a lot of them show, you know, it can worsen health potentially if they're supplemented. Anyway, Stephen Gundry made a video saying, you know, like, polyphenols are beneficial, here's the facts. It modifies the gut microbiome to be more in alignment with the healthy microbiome. It's like, let me see someone taking a polyphenol supplement, okay? Isolated polyphenol supplement, an intervention trial where they give a polyphenol supplement, and then their gut microbiome changes. Because we know for a fact if they just eat more plant foods that have polyphenols, the gut microbiome will change, because the gut microbiome is eating the plants. Okay, this is nothing about health outcomes. So yeah, all these fucking, like, these, you know, I don't want to say all these alternative or holistic health experts, you know, because there's nothing wrong with alternative medicine. It's these people that are in the limelight that are extrapolating correlation with causation. Some of them I respect greatly, like Dr. Mark Hyman. I have most of his original books. He was one of the first ones that actually inspired me to start, you know, on my own, start my own channel and whatnot. But this guy is always talking about, you know, cornucopia of polyphenol plant chemicals. Like, we have no evidence showing those are actually beneficial. Like, no causal evidence. We don't have, like, it's you know, not to say it's a bad idea, but there's a lot of people that are suffering. When we keep telling people, hey, you need to eat these plant foods, you need to eat these polyphenols, you need a healthy microbiome, these people actually believe, like the average person, these experts are acting like it's a necessity. Like, you must have a healthy microbiome. We have no definition of what a healthy microbiome is. You need polyphenols. You know, these people have all sorts of explanations on how polyphenols work with no causal evidence. Like, well, this mechanistic study showed that, you know, it decreases or it's anti-cancer and blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah, but when we have, you know, plant chemical deprivation studies, it actually shows improvements in antioxidant markers. Not to say that, again, is good enough to prove causation, but it's like, if you can eat plant foods and then you feel healthier because of it, do it. But you know, noceboing people is what's going on, where we're like, you need a healthy microbiome, and you need fiber to make that healthy microbiome. Healthy microbiome is super important. We know this is a fact. Polyphenols are super important, you know. Preventing cancer, cornucopia, phytochemicals like Mark Hyman, freaking Dr. Gundry, Joel Furman, all these fools will freaking say, and at the end of the day, a lot of these people, like myself, I actually suffered for 2 years. First, like on a vegan diet, and then second, just eating like a more balanced diet, trying to include more plant foods. I suffered for years, you know, thinking I needed this bullshit. And then when I just removed all these foods, all my problems went away. And that's actually the logic that underpins a lot of carnivore dieters, is like they used to full-heartedly believe they needed these plant foods for microbiome health and polyphenols and all fiber and gut health and all this crap. And then they realize they're suffering as a result of that dogma. And then they realize there's no causal evidence to begin with. You know, so it just grinds my gears to see like a carnivore person out of all people saying this. Like, oh my god, yeah. Here's your causal evidence for you. A large cohort study showing correlations. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, my objective carnivore Instagram influencer. Fuck. Alright, I'm done here. I don't have a lot of time. I've got an hour and 15 minutes before my next client. So, yeah, let me know in the comments what you guys think about this. Do you like this style of video? Definitely comment and let me know. Or send me a DM on Instagram. Let me know that you like these long, you know, more intimate conversations. I don't even know what I'm going to call this video, but I'll talk to you guys next time. And let me know what you guys think. Let me know about you think that there's causation? Send me some causal evidence. What do you think about correlation? What do you think about this person that commented on me? Because honestly, if I'm a dumbass, I want to know. Let me know. Am I the one who's dumb? Because I don't want to like feel like I know everything. Because I don't think I know everything. I just need a good argument against me to kind of like influence my thinking, right? Because I will change. I change my opinion all the time. All right, thanks, guys.